Welcome into the lounge. We are getting closer and closer to the draft. It's only a week and a day away. How many sleeps is that? Is that 7, 8?
Yeah, I'm
My
not good at
math is
math.
terrible.
Once I run out of fingers, then I don't know what to do. I think there's 7. Yeah, man, I can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
That's 7 more nights of minkering. Here we go.
Yes. Yeah, that's terrible for you. That's 7 more sleepless nights.
Oh gosh, I seriously do have a pit in my stomach already. All right, I'm serious. I do love the draft, man, and I can't imagine how Eric DeCosta must feel because I get nervous about it and like nervous excited about it. I honestly think that I get more amped up for the draft than I do for some regular season games.
Yeah, yeah. For some of them, that's probably the case. So to discuss the draft, I know fans have been listening to us discuss it ad nauseum for the past month. So we wanted to talk to somebody who really is really plugged in and is talking to more people around the NFL than just about anyone else. So let's go ahead and jump right into our interview with Good Morning Football's Peter Schrager.
You know, I'm not just saying this because you're coming on our pod right now and doing us a solid, but Good Morning Football is honestly the best show on TV.
Wow.
Honestly.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
all right. Maybe not best show. I'll say best football show.
Okay.
How about
I'll take it. Sure. Welcome.
Anyway, you got to tell us first of all about your digs here. Where are you at? Tell us what's around you here.
Okay, I want to give you guys the world tour of where I'm at. I am at my in-laws' house right now who live in the Baltimore area, and we are rocking with so many Ravens things. Let me get through this real quick. We've got the Super Bowl 35 poster, not your Ray Lewis, Joe Flacco Ravens. No. The Trent Dilfer, Brandon Stokely Ravens. That group right there. We've got the last game at Cole Fieldhouse ever played, March 3rd, 2002. Everyone knows where they were when that one happened. And I am just surrounded. There's a Final Four poster from 2002 when the Maryland Terps won it all. There's more Cal Ripken stuff around me right now than I ever cared to see. I'm from New York. I live in New York. We temporarily moved out of our place in New York due to space concerns. So I'm living more or less in a basement with my wife and my son, and we are decked out in Baltimore sports paraphernalia here, and I could not be more pleased. I love it. It's awesome.
That is awesome.
Well, like when you're at your parents' house or you're at your in-laws' house, those places kind of just are a time capsule. And that's exactly like what you're in right now. Like you leave and your room from high school never changes.
Exactly.
And everything is still the same.
No, exactly. I don't know if I'm going to ruin the shot here, but there's like a giant Cal Ripken book that's balancing this video camera right now. I've read it. Not only did I read it once, I read it twice because there's not much other reading material. I'm like, if you know about Cal Ripken circa 1995 before he broke the record, like I got it all down because I've read his biography twice.
Now, Peter, I moved in with my in-laws during a kitchen renovation.
Yes.
How long do you think you could stay at the in-laws house without going insane?
No, they're great. It's going well. Like I was not at all worried, but like it took a couple of days to adjust of just not being the man of the house necessarily. I'm quite all right being a passenger. I'm fine. Like at like 6:30, it's like dinner's ready. I'm like, I'm coming. Let's go. I'm ready. It's good. I'm in.
That's awesome.
So obviously we want to have you on to talk a little draft. You know the Ravens very well. So let's just start big picture. What do you think they need to do in this year's draft to add some players to kind of get them over that hump and get to that next level?
Yeah, Garrett, I look at this team and it's one of the deepest rosters in the league, and yet there's always room for improvement. I think pass rusher in first round, that's what I would go with. I know everyone wants the linebackers. Heard a lot of Ravens fans reach out to me and say, is there a chance we get Patrick Queen where we're sitting or we have to trade up? I don't think Patrick Queen is there. Is there a chance Kenneth Murray's there at 28? Whatever. No, probably not. But you could get a high-end defensive end or pass rushing type. I look at guys like AJ Epinesa out of Iowa. I look at Yetur Gross-Matos out of Penn State. These are guys that are playing at a high level and are going to be first-round picks. And because a lot of teams are going to be overdrafting offensive line, which I don't think is an area the Ravens necessarily need. I know Yanda, and you might want to replace that. You'll get to that. I think they could still get pass rush at the end of the first round and like a good pass rusher, a guy that could contribute in year one.
Right. I think what's interesting is, obviously, like you're talking about, the Ravens need more sacks, right? They were near the bottom bottom quarter of the league in sacks last year. But you have Judon and you have Jalen Ferguson coming back. So do you see Yeturgos Matos as being kind of a guy who, chips in as a third pass rusher and then maybe potentially takes over for Judon if he weren't signed to a long-term deal or something?
Yeah, and I think you're always looking for depth. I think about what Wink does on defense. There are so many guys that come in and make plays. They are like, well, how many plays did he play? How many snaps did he get? And you're like, oh, he only played that many snaps. I felt like he was all over the field because they have such a great rotation up front. I think you add another body in there. I think Brandon Williams might be one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the entire league. I don't think a defensive tackle is necessarily an area for need or a guy inside, but you kind of need some of those edge rushers and you need some of those guys at the other end of Brandon Williams and whoever else is going to be going next to him with Michael Pierce gone. Like, I like what they have up front, and yet I think you could always add another pass rusher.
So you mentioned Kenneth Murray. You think that he's going to be gone, both the guys, Queen and Murray. We probably spent more time talking about those two guys than anyone else, and maybe it's just because we love great linebacker play here in Baltimore. But I'm curious to get your perspective on Kenneth Murray, because you've said that you heard from NFL people that at the Combine, he had one of the most impressive interviews, and the off-the-field stuff really kind of wowed some of these NFL teams.
How do I do it without giving away my source? AFC team. Top.
Is your source Eric DeCosta?
No, I was going to say, is it a Ravens source?
No, and I'll tell you this. Anyone who tells you their source is Eric DeCosta is full of it because he doesn't talk to anybody. I'll say this. AFC team coach, not saying if it's a coordinator, if it's an assistant coach, but AFC team coach says, we don't need this guy. We just had one of the best combine interviews I've ever been a part of in 20 years of doing this Kenneth Murray. And if you just want to know who Kenneth Murray is, he showed up in Norman, Oklahoma as a 17-year-old, okay, was a captain by his sophomore season. And his life story is incredible to even get to where he is. But something that happened when he was 11 years old, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it or you've read some of the articles, his mother, who is a retired police officer, and his father, who is a pastor, adopted 3 children with special needs and brought him into the Murray household. And Kenneth helped raise those 3 kids. And he looks at them like as if they're blood brothers and sisters, and also considers them dear friends and really the inspiration for him to go out there every day. So he shares his story with this team, and he's not doing it in a, hey, look at me, or let me tell you why. It's just pretty matter of fact. This is who I am. And he is a leader, a born leader. He is a field general. So you think of the great linebacker leaders of recent history. And, of course, Ray Lewis comes to mind. And, of course, Brian Urlacher and Bobby Wagner up in Seattle. This coach was telling me, and it's been echoed by several other coaches, look, I don't know if he's the best sideline to sideline. I don't know if his 40 is going to be the best. But when it comes to a guy who is going to step on the field and demand respect and be able to call out the plays and know what a locker room is all about, it's Kenneth Murray. So you hear that and you start thinking, oh gosh, is there more of a Raven than what you hear right there? Like, right. That is a perfect fit. And yet I don't think he's still around at the end of the first round. Can I give you a name that has gotten a lot of buzz over the last few days? And it wasn't even like weeks that I've heard about, not necessarily for the Ravens, but another linebacker in the mix, a guy that you probably haven't done as much work on, Jordan Brooks out of Texas Tech. This lightning fast linebacker who's battling a shoulder injury right now, but apparently he is a guy that might slip into the first round and might be there at the end of the first round after Simmons, Murray, Queen are off the board.
Wow, well, do us a favor and stop talking about Murray, okay? You're selling him a little too hard, and all these coaches and GMs are going to watch you, and now there's no chance he's coming to the Ravens at 28, so just keep it quiet.
Not a position you necessarily see drafted so high. Last year, right, the Buccaneers took Devin White in the top 5, and I think people were like, do you take a middle linebacker? Like Patrick Willis a few years ago, Kuechly, of course.
Well, and the Steelers traded up.
Steelers traded up to get, you're right, Devin
Bush.
Right. But not like you see 11 linebackers off the board. So there is a chance that if Queen goes and Simmons goes, there is a chance if the Ravens want to trade up, maybe not 20 picks, but trade up 5 or 6 picks, Kenneth Murray could be theirs.
Well, so Eric DeCosta had kind of a conference call with reporters the other day, and we asked him where he thought Murray was going to go. He goes, top 40. When you hear that, is that Eric just, a little smoke screen? What are you thinking on that?
Look, it's the position, because if you look at this NFL right now, protect your quarterback, right? Get your
Yeah.
offensive tackles. I think you guys feel pretty good about Zeus and Stanley. Like those are, you're set, right? You don't need that. Get your quarterback. I think with an MVP, I think you're pretty good at that position. And then of course, get your pass rushers. You guys have pretty solid pass rushers across the board. And in this draft, it's offensive tackles, it is wide receivers, and it's pass rushers that are really deep. Teams might be reaching to start getting those guys and might overdraft them, meaning middle linebacker, which most teams have their guy, or inside linebacker, don't value it as much as pass rush and protecting the quarterback. Those guys could slip. I'm telling you, if Murray's there at 28, I would expect that would be the pick. And if he isn't the pick and he slips out of the first round, it's something that I didn't know about as far as the player on the field.
Right. So you bring up wide receiver as a Baltimore guy, a guy who married into a Ravens family here. I'm sure you've heard a lot about wide receivers over the years, and the Ravens need to get some. What do you expect? Like, what kind of wide receiver? Who are some guys that you think maybe, that could interest the Ravens? Could they go there in the first round? What do you expect them to do at wide receiver in the draft?
Hold on. Let me get my brother-in-law's Brashad Perryman jersey. I think.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah. No, and he's still, Perryman had a good season last year.
Yeah, it's true.
He kind of turned it around. But yes, there's been moments where that position has been really good. I mean, Steve Smith and Anquan Boldin were two of the best to ever play the position, and they had great seasons. Torrey Smith, obviously a legend. And yet you look at this last season, that there's got to be a lot of reason for optimism after what Hollywood Brown did in that playoff loss. Like Hollywood was amazing in that game, and he was finally fully healthy and looked good. And then if Boykin can be anything on the other end, you've got two guys from the same draft class that you kind of like. And of course, those other guys are kind of filling the hole, guys who know they're not going to get 30 targets a game in this offense or not get 10 targets a game, and they're pretty happy. So wide receiver for the Ravens, what am I looking for? Well, can you catch a football? Can you block? And are you okay not being the guy targeted 15 to 20 times a game? Because you're likely the third wide receiver, which means blocking is important, 5 to 10 targets, maybe. And then, can you learn our offense and be where you need to be when Lamar is going to get it to you? I look at that Ravens offense. I still, as much as everyone wants to make Lamar Jackson into, this dynamic passer, their offense isn't dictated that way. You're going to throw the deep shot to Hollywood. You're going to get the tight ends involved, and you might get a number 2 wide receiver, have 8 or 9 catches in a game. But it is not going to be 10 targets for all 3 wide receivers, and you guys know that. So I don't see it as high a priority as maybe some outside the organization or some in the media are looking at it as.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at Lamar, it's hard to build off of an MVP season when you already have that kind of a year. But what do you think is the progression for him? Like last year, it was all about take a step as a passer, and he obviously did that and had a much better passing season, much better overall season than anybody expected. So what's the next step for him?
I think, it's crazy to say that, right? But look at what Mahomes did last year. Like there was no way he could be better. And Mahomes might have had a better 2020 than he did 2019, and certainly had a better postseason. So this is not going to make headlines, but all right, now Lamar's 0-2 in the playoffs. Now it's time. Let's go win a playoff game. And I know you have to wait till January, but I remember Kirk Cousins last year had all these big wins in the regular season. And I kept on saying on Good Morning Football, I don't care. This doesn't do anything for me. I see me in January. Cousins goes into New Orleans, beats Drew Brees and the Saints. And I'm like, all right, now you've done that next level. After MVP, what's the next accomplishment? I don't think anything individually is what we're looking from Lamar. Can you say he could become a better passer? He could throw into tighter windows? Sure. That's any quarterback going into year 3. But for Lamar Jackson to take the leap, it requires the team to take the leap. And I think going, what'd you guys go? 14-2 last year?
Yep.
Unbelievable season. It needs more. It needs that January victory. And I'm not saying he has to win a Super Bowl, but we need to get off that schneid, and you need to win a playoff game next year for Lamar to take the next step.
Yeah. I felt like, there was so much pressure that Lamar put on himself. After it happened in his rookie season, he goes in and he loses his first playoff game, and then he goes into the Titans game and they get up early. You could kind of see him put that on his shoulders a little bit. Did you kind of see that? And how does a guy who starts his career as amazing as it has been, 0-2 in the playoffs, how do you get over that hump?
Yeah, and you could say, hey, if he converts one of those 4th and 1s, which you guys converted every single time in the regular season, talking about a different game. And I'm not questioning any of the analytics or Harbaugh's decisions, but I watched that game back recently. I mean, not because it was on TV, just because there's nothing else to do, and I figured I'd go back and watch it. And there's a situation where it's they're down 14-6 in the third quarter, and it's like you kick the field goal, it's 14-9. There's a million ways you can dissect this. But Lamar threw the ball pretty well in that game. Like Hollywood played really well in that game. Mark Ingram was injured in that game. There's a million ways you can pick this thing apart. And I don't think you can look at Lamar and saying, hey, if you had done this, the following week, we've got Kansas City coming into our building in the divisional round. Like that wasn't that type of game. A million things happened, and the Ravens just could not get out of their own way when in the regular season they were this unstoppable team. So I don't know what I would tell him. I'm not a quarterback coach. I'm not John Harbaugh, but I know Lamar just a little bit. A couple production meetings, couple interactions, got to hang out with him before the NFL honors this year down in Miami, and he could not have been cooler and more confident. He was with his mother. They were both tremendous. And Lamar knows what the score is. Like, he knows the deal. He enjoyed wearing that orange jacket and getting the MVP and saying what it is. But, like, just like Mahomes kind of felt like there was unfinished business last year when they lost to the Patriots in the playoffs when he accepted his MVP, you can sense that Lamar knows this is all good and well, and I appreciate this. This is cool, and it's fun, and I'll never forget it. Let's go win the chip. And that's what I kind of got from Lamar. And that's all he needs, like the motivation to take that next step.
Mm-hmm. It's never too early to do projections. If you're doing projections right now, are you putting Kansas City and Baltimore in the AFC Championship?
Yeah. Patriots, I got to see what they're doing at quarterback.
Right.
Bills, I felt like that was an all-time collapse in Houston. Houston lost their best receiver. Like, I'm thinking about the other teams, and Tennessee was a nice run, but they lose Conklin. They lose Jarrell Casey. Like, those are big players. Baltimore and Kansas City, to me, if I'm CBS and they carry those AFC games, like, I'm doing flips because I will always tune in to see Mahomes. And after last year, I will always tune in to see Baltimore. And I don't think they would have any problem with those two teams in an AFC championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's potential. This is probably the dream scenario, but I think that there's potential for that Mahomes-Lamar, and it hasn't happened yet in the playoffs, but for that to be a Brady, a Manning. I mean,
say it. It's fine.
Yeah, that's. I'm thinking big here, but like there's potential for it to get to that kind of a level.
Yeah, and like there's like weird things that happen. Like, are the Colts going to be good this year? Because Phillip Rivers wasn't great last year, and the Colts have a good team. Like, is that an upgrade from Brissett? I don't know. What are the Patriots? I have no idea. Does Cleveland show us what they kind of saw 2 years ago at the end? And then the team that I think is the biggest question mark, and a team that a lot of people are like wait and see on, what the heck are the Steelers this year? Like, still a really good defense. And when he's out there, Ben Roethlisberger is significantly better than Duck Hodges. Like, I think the Steelers might be good again. So the AFC is wide open, and I don't even know who the Chargers and Dolphins are starting at quarterback.
Right.
How hard does your wife's family take a Ravens loss, and how much do you hear about it on text threads?
Bad. And like that, like, all right, there was a couple, like the Browns won in the regular season last year. That was early, right? Like week 4.
Yeah, week 4. Yep.
Everyone was riding high on Lamar. They lost to Kansas City, but like he still felt pretty good. And then they just
right.
But like my wife went to that game and she like texted me. She's like, I'm done going to Ravens games. Like they win when I'm not there. Like one of those type deals.
Yeah.
And then the playoff game, like, bad weather, Saturday night, all this hype, everyone's excited. And then you knew it was over by like, third quarter. I mean, they were despondent. And I think that's the Ravens fan base. They live and they breathe and they love the Ravens. Like I don't fancy myself TV star or anything like that, but like I'll go into the giant over here in Owings Mills and people are like, Schrager, Good Morning Football, you guys are nice to the Ravens. I'm like, yes, it happen in other cities. Like these Ravens fans are on an all-time high when the Ravens are great, but they really feel it when the Ravens have a disappointing loss.
Yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned Eric DeCosta and how anybody who says that he's their source is a liar. Yeah. Have you ever texted DeCosta and he just ghosts you or what?
He's not. I mean, he's the nicest guy in person, and like you go up to him, like I have a good relationship with him. We'll text and stuff, but like football stuff, no. There's a lot of guys like that. Like Tom Telesco with the Chargers is maybe the nicest guy in the world, but like he won't even try to be coy. Like you text him football stuff, he's like, I don't talk about that stuff on text. And anyone who thinks that they are getting stuff from Eric DeCosta, unless you're I don't know, Chad Steele, Kevin Byrne, or maybe Patrick Gleason, the PR staff, I find them to be liars because Eric has kept it so close to the vest for so many years as a number 2, and now as the number 1. There's no. Did anyone know they were taking Hollywood Brown last year? No, that did not get. No one knew that until it actually happened, and I think it's better off that way.
Right. Well, Lamar Jackson, the all-time coup.
That was quite. I mean, to trade back in and get Lamar, it was wild. I had them taking Lamar in the first round, but I had them taking him with the Hayden Hurst pick. I thought they, or whatever it was, they traded back, but like 15.
Right.
They didn't take quarterback at 15, and everyone's like, told you Lamar's not a first rounder, told you. And Lamar worked out pretty well. He probably should have gone a little earlier than 32.
So do you think this draft, that it kind of favors the Ravens because it's so wacky, right? And teams just don't have as much information? Are there teams that are going to be in better situations than others, and are the Ravens one of those?
I think this is a good, like, here's how I see it, and I could be wrong in whenever the draft happens in a couple of days, but like, I don't see all these trades in the first round. I think teams have their draft board set. They know the top talent because they've been scouting them. They saw them at the combine. They met I could see it being pretty straightforward in the first round. But as you guys know, the Ravens make their hay on days 2 and day 3. And that's when I think the wheeling and dealing really occurs, because I could tell you straight up, I've got teams, and I don't do hey, my phone is blowing up. Like, I've got guys at teams who typically would not be asking my opinion, where do you know, like, other teams have this small school prospect? Like, what do you think? Is this guy day 2 or this guy day 3? I think there's a lot more confusion when it gets to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. And I think the Ravens being so well respected, so buttoned up with DaCosta and Joe Ortiz and all those guys and George Coquille, like all the legends that you hear about in Ravens lore working under Ozzie, a lot of them are still there, and they're pretty buttoned up and they're pretty dialed in. I think that's where they have the advantage, as far as other teams maybe being a bunch of new guys grouped together with a new coach and a new coordinator and a new system. Like, the Ravens know what they're looking for, and they've known it for several years.
Before we let you go, I'm curious, how many texts or calls do you get when the last 48, 24 hours before the draft from different guys saying, hey, can you put out there that we like this guy? Like, how much is your phone blowing up? Because all of a sudden you become somebody that people want to get information out to the masses through.
Okay, so Garrett, I'll give you this. I never get the ask from a team ever to be like, can you put this in your mock draft so that there's a smokescreen? Or can you tweet this? What you will get is the agent texting you saying, hey, I'm hearing a lot of late in the process, first round buzz on my guy. And, and it's a guy that you text one team, they're like 4th round grade. Like, there's no first round buzz. And I've been burned by it before, where I'll put like a guy in the end of the first round and he'll be like, where did that come from? And be like, just wait. And then he goes in the 3rd or 4th. And you just have to learn your lessons on that. Like, what the agents tell you necessarily doesn't benefit you as a what's it called? Prognosticator. Benefit them as an agent, so they can look at the parents and say, see, here's why you signed with me. I got Schrager to say this, this, and this. And I've learned my lesson over the years. What you will see, though, are straight out lies. Like, you'll hear from a team, and you got to really read the room a little bit, or read your phone a little bit. And a team will say to you, we don't like this player. We like this guy. And then 2 days after the draft, you go back and they took the player, not that guy. And that's when you have something to say. It's hey, you lied to me straight up. They're like, I know. Well, you just got to be careful.
Yeah. I owe you a beer.
Exactly. I'll see you at the combine. My bad. Or I was actually a fan of that guy. It was someone else in the room who liked the other guy and whatever. So there is a lot of like smoke screens that are being done, but like, it's never telegraphed as clearly as, hey, do me a solid. Say we're taking Tua with the 3rd pick or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So end of the day, your pick for the Ravens at 28 is your Turgos Matos. You sticking with that one?
I think I'm going to change it right now.
Ooh, all right. I like the tinkering. I'm a fan.
Let me go to my board right now. Let's see. My pick for the Ravens right now will be, and we've got we're staying at 28, right?
We'll say that, right? Okay,
for the sake of this, we are taking out of the University of Iowa to fill in the giant holes of having an Iowa guy on our team that's going to be a leader, edge rusher, AJ Epinesa. Okay,
All
AJ
right.
Epinesa. This is a player who, let's look over here, all-state in football, all-state in discus, scored 1,000 points in basketball, diverse athlete who is a no-nonsense guy. AJ Epinesa reminds me a little bit of that Ravens way that we saw with Yanda, maybe Haloti Nata, where he was all business, very serious. I met AJ Epinesa at the draft, at the combine. Not many smiles, more all business. That could be the Ravens way. I'm going AJ Epinesa will be the Ravens pick at 28.
I like it. All right.
Nice.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it.
If you guys can get one of those curbside pickup times at Wegmans or the Giant or any of those in Owings Mills or any of the Hunt Valley, just let me know because I will take that gladly. We're having our issues trying to figure that all out online.
We'll keep an eye out for you around Owings Mills.
I got a little ramen soup in the bunker. I can.
That's what I'm rolling with, dude. I know. All
right. Well, thank you, Peter. Awesome. Well, good stuff from Peter. Always good to have a Ravens guy on the pod. You know, we're actually, it's crazy how lucky we are. Mel Kiper, Baltimore guy, Maryland guy. We got Schrager, who's holding it down in the suburbs here of Baltimore right now. Then we're going to have on Daniel Jeremiah, who is a former Ravens scout. I mean, we're talking about three of the biggest names in football media, and they're all Ravens guys.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And selfishly, that helps us when we're trying to get guests for the podcast.
Very true.
Most importantly.
Yeah.
So what do you think of his pick, AJ Epinesa? You've been talking about him. That's been somebody, I mean, we're not going to give away our mocks until next week, but what do you think about that pick that he has right now?
He has spent some time penciled in as my pick in the first round. I'm not saying if he's currently the guy, but I'm just saying at one point over this arc, this process that I'm on, he has been the guy.
He does make a lot of sense because when you think about Ravens picks in the first round, oftentimes it's a guy who falls for whatever reason, highly productive, like he talked about, no nonsense, serious guy, going to come in and work hard and be an immediate impact player. But all of a sudden then people are like, wait, why did this guy fall to that, 28? What did we miss? And then it often ends up being that teams overvalued workout performances and the combine. And then you're like, wait, how did Orlando Brown go in the third round and he's a Pro Bowler in his second year and he was great in college? What did we miss?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes that happens, and the Ravens are really, really skilled at kind of assessing whether the combine workout is something to be concerned about or whether he just had a bad combine workout, but what he does on the field is much more significant than anything he did in Indianapolis.
Well, here's the crazy part. I've been thinking, okay, maybe Epinesa is a guy who slips to the Ravens. Then Mel Kiper releases his mock draft, and he's got him, his most recent one, he's got him at number 40.
Yeah.
Number 40.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
So that just really surprised me. But I mean, he checks a lot of boxes in terms of a Raven, in terms of, like you're saying, play style, heavy-handed, physical guy. His father, he followed in the footsteps of his father. How many times have we heard that with a Raven, right?
Right,
I mean, he played basketball and was a discus throw, state championship discus thrower. Ravens eat that stuff up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, this guy is he could definitely be a Raven. I think that would be a really good pick. I mean, imagine him and Jalen Ferguson, or Jalen Ferguson for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
That could be pretty nice. Or he steps into the Derek Wolfe, spot years down the line, a year or two, whatever down the line. I mean, I just think that he could be a very good player for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think that there's some merit there. So we want to read an email here before we wrap up. And as always, you guys can reach us at the lounge at ravens.nfl.net. Screwed up on the email.
Jeez Louise.
You're right. The lounge at ravens.nfl.net. This one comes to us from Scott Phillips, who says, thanks, guys, for all you're doing and keeping us entertained and fueling our excitement for all things Ravens. On normal years during the draft, which Ravens staff member or role would you most want to have inside the draft room?
Steve Bisciotti?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
I get to have a cigar in hand, and I'm just kind of watching it all play out, and I know that I'm surrounded by a bunch of the best guys in the business.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is fun, man.
Right,
and then he's still involved. Like,
yeah,
Steve
you get to kind of provide some perspective,
right,
and some critical thinking, and like help. I think when you listen to Eric and Ozzy or John talk about how Steve is in the draft room, he kind of brings that like big picture business oriented perspective to the entire process, thinking not just like, is this guy a good player, but like he's really involved in the trades and how does this trade affect what you're going to get later in terms of value, and then also even planning like this year, maybe 2-3 years down the line. Like he's very involved in that side of things.
Yeah. Well, you always know that the Ravens draft is over when you start to smell the cigar smoke on day 3. Then you're like, all right, well they're celebrating. It's it's like the naming of the Pope. The white smoke goes up. You're like, it's all right. The draft is done for the Ravens. So Steve always likes to celebrate with his guys, and Eric DeCosta better light one up in his bunker that he's drafted from, just for to keep the tradition alive. I'll say that much.
So he also has a second question, and he says that Erica said he wants our offense to become undefendable.
Yeah.
Outside of a big-bodied receiver and offensive line. So outside of those two positions, what's the next position, and what type of player fit do you think could most improve our offense? Well, I mean, if you're removing receiver and offensive line from the equation, you're not going to address quarterback. There's not too many options left on the table. So if you're adding anything to the offense, to me, I think my number one would be a stud offensive lineman.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think an offensive lineman probably is the biggest upgrade to this offense. And I also go against the notion of the big body wide receiver.
Same.
To me, size doesn't really matter. I think it could be a smaller guy, around 6 foot or whatever, or a little smaller even, who, like Peter Schrager was saying, you're not getting many targets. It's what can you do with those targets? So I think, to me, the Ravens want to build a explosive offense, and that means a guy who might only get 5 targets, but he can take one of them 80 yards. You know, so that's the kind of target I think that suits the Ravens the best right now, moving forward, and getting this undefendable offense, which I like the sounds. Last year it was revolutionary. Now it's undefendable.
Yeah, that's the 2.0 offense, the 2.0 version.
Hey, revolutionary happened, so let's make it happen 2 times.
I don't know. This might be giving some thoughts away on my mock, but if you were to go back several years and I would think about a receiver who would be a fit, I would often look at, I would look at the measurables. I would say, I would kind of start there and say, all right, this guy's 6'3", 215 pounds. I like that.
Yeah.
That would be kind of like a starting point. And if I would look at a guy who's 5'10", I'm like, too small.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that this year. And
I don't care. I don't care what their size is. I honestly don't care.
I almost think, to some respects, almost the big guy is almost like a detriment. Where like if I'm like 6'3", too big.
And here's the thing. What did the Chiefs win with last year?
No, exactly.
Speed.
McCole Hardman, Tyreek Hill. Those were the guys. Sammy Watkins isn't that big. He's bigger than those guys, but Tyreek Hill is tough to compare anybody to because he's such a freak. But McCole Hardman is in that same build as Hill. Just a bunch of fast guys, smaller, fast guys. And
now go ahead.
I think that could be the model.
Yeah. Now the difficulty is you still need guys who can block, right? Mm-hmm. It's important to have blocking wide receivers for the Ravens. Now I think Boykin can block really well. Willie Snead is a very good blocker. So it's not like you can put out there a ton of track guys who can't block at all, right? It has to be some kind of balance there. But I still lean towards the Ravens could use another Hollywood more than they could use a big blocking, more lumbering wide receiver.
Right. All right, so that's it for today. Big thanks to Schrager for joining us. You can catch him every day on Good Morning Football. Like you said off the top, Ryan, one of the best shows, especially sports shows on TV. He does a great job. So thanks to him for his time. And stay tuned, because coming up later this week on Friday, in Friday's episode of the podcast, we'll be joined by another NFL Network star, and that's the draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah. So we've got a busy week on the podcast front. You can email us, as I said, at thelounge@ravens.nfl.net. Thanks so much.
You got it right that time.
I got it right that time. We'll be back with you guys on Friday.